Welcome or welcome back, new viewers and game bears. It is time for the second part of the Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee Unused content video, and we're going to be looking at some screenshots from the old May 2018 reveal trailer and the changes that happened between that and the final game. So let us begin, part 2. But before we truly begin, at any point in time in this video, if you enjoy it, please consider leaving a like, a comment, and subscribe to help these videos get noticed and support the channel. Greatly appreciated, and now let us begin. Alright, May 2018 reveal trailer. I remember I was in my sophomore year of high school when this first happened. The initial reveal trailer of Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee had many differences from the final version of the game. Some of the cuts from the trailers shown below appear in future trailers, but are reused footage for this build. The cutscene, where your starter Pokemon begins riding on the player's shoulder, lacks background elements that are present in the final version. Kind of like this little board over here with those little sticky notes, I think is a good example. The earliest known point that had been changed was during the large release of pre-release screenshot date, July 12th, 2018. Alright, notice how the color saturation is a little different here. Like here, in the final version, Pikachu is a bit of a deeper shade of yellow than here. It's a little bit duller. Alright, following that, the Pokémon clerk is missing from Route 1 despite the player's starter Pokemon being on their shoulder, which is not in the case in the final version, because you had yet to even get your starter Pokemon. Well, you got your starter right over here, but yeah. And here's what that looks like. Oh yes, game footage is not final. Always gotta remember that message. Alright, early gameplay footage of Future City also depicts certain environmental elements missing in the overworld, such as the rocks next to the Pokemon Center. Like these little rubble rocks over here are not here in the original build. Alright, many NPCs appear to have different placements, such as the youngster in Viridian Forest, when compared to the final. Notably, Viridian Forest is also missing a few rays of sunlight through the trees in the early footage. This youngster also had a different position from both this trailer and the final build, with another different position seen in the E3 2018 Treehouse livestream. Alright, you can see that there. The youngster is in a completely different spot in these two versions. Let's get a slightly closer look. He happens to be there in this version, and then in a completely different spot in the final game. Alright, Vermilion City Docks is also missing many elements, such as the guardrails and water rocks. Interestingly, the small island east of the docks has also been shifted further to the right in the final. Here's what that looks like here. Yeah, some of the guardrails aren't up here, while here they are in the final version. Alright, the early game battle environments appear to differ in its geometry and objects placements when compared to the final. Note the rock and tree placements as well as the hill sizes in the background. Alright, here's what that looks like. Yes, always use a wrist strap while you're playing. I didn't know I was playing on a Wii. Yeah, I know, the Switch Joy-Cons have those little straps too. Likewise, the rock placement and general battle environment for Kanto's water routes are slightly different from the final version. You can see the colors are a little bit more muted here than they are in the final version. Alright, an NPC is missing on Route 3. Just before the entrance to Mount Moon, the camera before you enter the cave is also noticeably pulled back in the trailer, and that's what this looks like here. And here's another picture of it. The camera does look a little bit different here. I mean, I know it's a minor change, but I wonder if that would really change certain perspectives in certain cutscenes, with the camera being that way. Where in the final version, it's a little more top-down. Our Mount Moon has a slightly different battle environment in this trailer when compared to the final, and that's what this looks like. The cave backwards looks a little different, almost like this little hole in the walls over there. Actually, that's just other rocks. And in the final version, there's this added rock over here that is the same color as this one. When walking on a nugget bridge, the camera angle is significantly closer to the player in this trailer when compared to the final version. It's a little hard to see on the little switch here, but yeah, it does look, the camera angle is much closer to the players than it is here. At this early environment of Nugget Bridge can also be seen in this trailer. It lacks a unique background and proper water textures. The May 2018 prototype build appears to share these unfinished elements. And this is what that looks like. Whatever this little extra part of the bridge is, it kind of makes things look a little empty, you know? Because that's not, well, it's kind of there in the final version, but here, because of the camera angle, well, this is the another prototype version. But here, because of the camera, it makes the scene look a little more full, I guess, if that makes any sense. And same in the final build. It was really just a camera angle, to be fair with you, which I think that's only the camera angle that happens when you're playing in two-player mode. Route 17 is both lacking a coach trainer and has a different placement for a punk guy in this early version. Yeah, the coach trainer was most likely not there in this build. Either that or the coach trainer wasn't even a concept yet. They probably haven't even made the 3D models for them. Yeah, the punk trainer, I don't think it's a punk trainer up there. Probably not. But yeah, he's not there like he is in this version of the reveal trailer. Similarly to other locations in this trailer, Route 17's battle environment appears to be unrefined when compared to the final. Note the hill geometry and rock sizes. They do look a bit smaller than in the final version. It's minor things, but you notice them. Also, a little sign in the background. Just wanted to point that out. The newest version of the save screen can be seen in this trailer. It lacks any trainer cards, gym badges, or unique animations for holding your partner Pokemon. What's interesting is that a graphic can be seen behind the player, which was perhaps the original design of the trainer card before some sort of UI overhaul, and this is what it looks like over here, though it's a little hard to see. I think we can get a slightly closer look. Alright. Just an early version of that before they stylized the trainer card that we see in the final game. Alright, transferring Pokemon between Go and Let's Go appears far more seamless in this trailer. Without using a separate menu to transfer Pokemon between one game to the other, this could have been edited specifically for the trailer, but it could also be indicative of initially having to recapture Pokemon individually as opposed to bulk transfer, which are possible in the final. I should know, I used to transfer Pokemon from my old Pokemon Go account to Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee back in high school. A different looking typeface can also be seen here, then that doesn't appear to be in the final game whatsoever. Alright, this is a little blurry. It's really hard to see here. This one, however, looks a little bit better. Alright, you brought Dratini to Go Park, which I don't think that text appears in the final game. And here's what to my memory, I don't know. If anybody can please correct me on that, please do. Alright, sending a Meltan box, I used to do that all the time back in high school as well, to Pokemon Go is done automatically when transferring into Pokemon Go. No screen, like this exists in the final game. I don't remember that little box being there, so that's interesting. They most likely just took that out of there so, you know, it takes up less time, I guess. You can get to your Meltan sooner in Pokemon Go. Route 17 features different trainer placements in this shot when compared to the final. Alright, this little picnicker over here is not there in the final version. And that's kind of it. And again, it's a different camera angle because the player over here was on Charizard. Which tells me they got to that point in the game where you can actually fly on them in this trailer over here. Either that or it was just locked early on for testing purposes and for this trailer purpose, you know, show that off. Though in the final game, you don't unlock that till after you beat the Elite Four. Alright, several trainers are missing or have different placements on Route 14 in this trailer. Here's what that looks like. Just like in the original Gen 1 games in Fire Red Leaf Green, yeah, there's a whole line of gang member trainer classes up here. In the final version, just like in the original Gen 1 games and in Fire Red Leaf Green, well, in this trailer, they most likely just haven't been put there yet. I think that's what that is. Alright, the Pokemon Tower has a different battle background, with visible flowers on graves that appear closer to the camera than the final version. And you can see that right over here. Honestly, it's kind of a nice touch. I wish they kept that. That is a common thing in the real world on graves, so makes me wonder why they removed those. Small detail, but would have been nice. Alright, Mewtwo's encounter cutscene features crystals with different shapes and arrangements than in the trailer. It is what that looks like, and the lighting seems slightly different as well, compared to what that looks like in the final version. It also seems to be a bit more effects here, I guess. So let me take a look at that again. I think it's just the effects, but Mewtwo's head even looks slightly different here, too, than it does in the final version. I can't be the only one who sees that, but whatever. Alright. E3 2018 Treehouse Live. During the E3 2018, a live stream of the game's preview build was shown on Nintendo's Treehouse Live segment, and features some slight differences from the final. While it appears to be further along than the leaked prototype build of the game, it still shares some elements in common with it. The camera is considerably closer to the player upon entering Viridian Forest. You can see the difference in the camera over here. I guess it's a little more zoomed out so you can just see a bit more of the forest. I think that's what it is. Alright, tutorial screen in this footage are far less refined than the original. It shares this change with an earlier prototype build, suggesting that it was a fairly late change. The text is also different. Yeah, the font is slightly different compared to the final version. You can see this weird white bar over here that kind of looks like, or white box I should say, that kind of looks like a Wii U pad. Boy, Game Freak's not gonna like that I made that comparison, are they? But anyways, that was more filled in the final version. And yeah, this little Wii U pad thing here with a little picture of Pidgey with that raspberry on here, it looks kind of tacked on, almost like a sticker of some sort, or like a magnet you put on a fridge. So I'm kind of glad they changed it to make it look a little more seamless, you know? And it was the raspberries using the Fire Red Leaf Green Ultra Sun Ultra Moon palette in the Treehouse Live stream. Most likely they didn't make the current model that they have for it, the little sprite over here, so they had to reuse some previous sprites. Probably just so they can get the trailer done on time, most likely, or saves a little time for them before they change it later on. Despite this, it uses the correct graphics when displayed in battle. Alright, here's what that looks like here, with its more orangish color compared to our more red color in the final game. And this is what the battle looked like during that live stream. And here's it in the final game. Alright, while the game does tell you the amount of EXP gained from a Pokemon, it doesn't display that amount when distributing to your full party. Alright, your Pokemon got EXP. It doesn't really say anything there. While in the final version, it just says, hey, you got 12 experience points, or the entire party got that number. When defeating a trainer's Pokemon in battle, the game references the EXP share item when distributing the EXP to the rest of your team. Of course, it is a holdover from previous Pokemon games before it became part of the core gameplay. Excuse my stuttering. This is also the case for an early prototype build as well. So they must, just like with the Raspberry before, they most likely just pulled this text over to show it off in the trailers before they changed it up later on in development. Again, saves them a bit of time. It's done quite often during game development. Your party of Pokemon in waiting also got EXP points thanks to the EXP share. While in the final version, it just says your party in waiting also got EXP points. Alright, Bugcatcher Rick awards the player with 3 Pokeballs when defeated, despite not accommodating for the plural amount of balls, which isn't the case in the final. The money the player receives is also double than in the game's release build, 36. It's possible that these changes were specifically made to provide those playing the demo at the event with more resources, probably. Likewise, a Bugcatcher Sammy, Bugcatcher Rick, and Camper Liam also give the player double their final money reward for their defeat, 36, excuse me, and 104 are doubled respectively. Similarly, Lash Jocelyn gives 4 times the amount of money she awards the player in the final version, 40 Pokédollars, when in this trailer she gives you 160. Alright, here's what that looks like, even though it's just a little text change, that's all it is. Might as well show it in greater detail. Alright, in the demo, the player can find a hidden antidote behind the tree in the top right-hand corner of the forest. In the final, it's a potion. Honestly, an antidote would have been more appreciated, not gonna lie, because, hey, you're at the point in the game where you can get poisoned pretty easily by those pesky Weedles. That the trainers might have, since you don't fight wild Pokemon in this game. Outside of legendary Pokemon battles, that is. The coach trainer's explanations for a Pokemon's CP, or combat points, is oddly vague in this build when compared to the final. Most likely just wasn't finalized is all. The camera's perspective also appears to pan differently the further you walk down the Viridian Forest exit gate in this build. Here's what that looks like. Here CP is overall value of the various stacks combined. That is kind of vague, actually, when in the final version he says, I hear CP is a value made up of various stats and things combined. Alright, that's got a little more detail put into it. Alright, some pre-release screenshots now. As with most games, pre-release screenshots were sent out as part of press kits, and have subsequently been uploaded onto the internet. A handful contain noticeable difference from the final game. Alright, here's the May 30th, 2018 trailer build. The only screenshot that was released on this day featured Viridian City and lacks an NPC that eventually ended up sitting on the bench next to the Pokemart. Interestingly, there was also a tree to the right of the Pokemart instead of a fence, as is the case in the final. This means that this screenshot predates the earliest prototype build, as the tree has been replaced by the fence by May 12th in the prototype version. Here's the May 12th build. Alright, here's what it looks like in the final version. Alright, here's the July 12th trailer build. A screenshot released on July 12th shows a battle that takes place on Route 3. It features an incomplete battle environment with far fewer background trees. As you can see here, there are more trees in the final version, and here's a closer look. And here's a look at the final version. Alright, and with that being said, we're done with this segment, but there is one last segment we have to worry about. And don't worry, we don't have to worry about Bulbapedia like the last few Pokemon vids with Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. Alright, and now we're looking at this. On December 24th, an early prototype of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was unexpectedly dumped online by an anonymous user named Beluga, Beluga, like the whale. But anyways, we're not gonna look past all of that text. Why don't we look at some unused trainer teams first. Even though the game is unfinished, many trainers can still be fought. This page, I cannot read, will compare their teams to the final release of the game. If they're not here, that means their teams are the same. Alright, here's Trace's team at the beginning of the game, using a level 3 Pidgey against a level 6 Pikachu. However, in the final version, the starter Pokemon is exactly one level lower than the final build. So, in the final version of the game, whichever starter he has is level 7. Alright, here's the gym leaders. Our Brock's fight is completely skipped in this build. I guess this fight just wasn't made yet? I don't know. When you approach him in battle, you automatically get his gym badge and don't fight him. Huh, almost like in the anime, not entirely, but still. The game appears to crash whenever Misty gives you her gym badge, but her team is otherwise the same. Most likely these things just weren't fully finished yet in this build, that's most likely why that happens. Alright, Lieutenant Surge's team is a little different. His entire team is exactly one level lower than in the final game. For Sabrina, her entire team is exactly 2 levels higher than in the final build, but Sabrina's team is missing her Jinx from the final entirely. Nah, screw Jinx, so who cares? If you like Jinx, don't let my my opinion of the Pokemon phase your opinion of said Pokemon. Alright, here's Blaine's team. The entire team is exactly 6 levels higher than in the final build. Alright, Blaine's Rapidash also knows Fire Blast in this build. Alright, and then finally Giovanni's team. The entire team is exactly 7 levels higher than in the final game. Alright, now for Elite 4 member teams. Beating Lance appears to crash the game, most likely because that scene wasn't fully finished, that's why, and the game didn't know what to do once you beat him. Alright, must use the script debug menu to access the champion battle. Script, debug, script, call, and this whole code over here, script script, I think, underscore debug underscore event underscore jump, and that's the code that will cause the champion battle to start after you beat Lance. Alright, Eevee 8200 champion battle. When using the debug menu to fight your rival, it displays Pokemon's League Blue alongside its Japanese text, most likely as a placeholder. Almost certain a placeholder. Gee, look at that. But it's possible that Blue could have still been the champion for much of development before it was changed later to the Pokemon Stadium NPC over here. I'm gonna keep saying it. But anyways, the entirety of Lorelai's team is 8 levels higher than in the final game, showing that the levels are going to be significantly higher for most of the Elite Four, which meant more grinding, so I'm kind of glad they lowered it. Because grinding in this game can be a little tedious. Well, maybe not that tedious, just annoying to kind of keep those catch combos going. Again, I don't enjoy it as much as other people do. If you know why, well, if you've seen my Nuzlocke, you'll know why. Alright, Bruno's team, 7 levels higher than in the final game. Agatha's team, 6 levels higher than in the final game. Lance's team, 5 levels higher than in the final game. And entire team for the Pokemon Stadium NPC Trace over here is 5 levels higher than in the final game. And as for gym leader rematches, Koga's missing from this gym, meaning he was unable to be rematched. Blue is also missing, but is instead located out of bounds to the left of the gym's entrance, and we'll see that later on. Our Brock's gym, 9 levels higher than the final game. Misty's, 9 levels higher in the final game. Same with Lieutenant Surge, Erica, Sabrina, and Blaine, all of them 9 levels higher in the final game. Or then in the final game, excuse me. Alright, Blue over here. Team unfinished. Blue's Charizard knows Heat Wave in this build when he does not in the final game. Alright, Lorelai's entire team rematch is 7 levels higher than in the final game. Alright, Bruno's 6 levels higher than the final game, and also his Hitmonlee knows Super Power in this build when it doesn't in the final game. Agatha's entire team is 5 levels higher than in the final build. Agatha's Gengar knows Fire Punch, the same Gen 1 Fire Punch ain't a special move. And Agatha's Gengar knows Foul Play in this build. At level 69, nice. Alright, Lance, his entire team is 4 levels higher here than it is in the final game. And the Pokemon Stadium NPC once again, no, I will not stop saying that. His entire team is exactly 4 levels higher than in the final game. Rivals Pidgeot knows Reflect, which I don't think is a move Pidgeot can learn, correct me if I'm wrong. And his Slowbro knows Flamethrower. Maybe in this early build, Pidgeot can learn that move for some reason, but not in the final game, at least not to my memory. I'm about to go look that up after this, just to make sure. Our special trainers, Mina, does not have a team programmed for a battle pre-Hall of Fame. And you can see here, it looks like her team was originally going to be battled. Alright, you can still fight her at any time, but alright, never mind. I just never knew that, apparently. You can still fight her at any time using an unusually high-level team, suggesting that she was initially just a post-game Easter egg, until very late in development where they decided to make her a part of the story as a little Easter egg. She could also be battled indefinitely as opposed to once per day in the final. Just fight her as many times as you want, which seemed like it would have been good for grinding, but if you want to grind, just chain catch a bunch of chances if you can, if you have the patience for that. But anyways, this random Karate Master trainer, well, I shouldn't say he's random, he's the Karate Master. His Polymath is one level higher than it is in the final version. Mina's team in the post-game. The Mr. Mime and the Lugus are 14 levels higher than her post-game team in the final game. Similarly, the Alolan Ninetales is 13 levels higher than in the final game. And this coach trainer with the Rattata, an unfinished team, so his team's just unfinished. Our regular trainers, the coach trainer Kareem, with a male Nidoran, level 10, is located on Route 3 in the final version of the game. Has a level 11 Bulbasaur in the final game when he doesn't have that here, and gives a revive undefeated in the final version, or at least in this version, I guess. So this team was most likely just unfinished. Alright, youngster Colton. This trainer does not exist in the final build, so I guess he just got erased earlier on. Alright, last Hannah. Her team... Alright, same team as last Evelyn in the final game, so she was most likely just changed later on to last Evelyn. The coach trainer Amala, with a level 15 Graveler for some reason, has level 16 Machop instead in the final version. Makes sense because she is hacking. Why does she have a level 15 Graveler? But anyways. Alright, Swimmer Ellen with a level 16 Goldian. Same team as Beauty Lily. Alright, Casey with a Shelter has the same team as Beauty Violet. And finally, Barbara Seal with her Seal. Same team as Beauty Daisy in the final version of the game. That's Sailor Duncan with a Staryu and a Krabby. This trainer does not exist in the final build. Seems to be based off of a trainer from Fire Red Leaf Green. Alright, I guess most likely as a placeholder, before they decided to remove him. Alright, Sailor Philip with a Machop. This trainer does not exist in the final build. Seems to be based on a trainer from Fire Red Leaf Green once again. Last Pamela. This trainer does not exist in this final build. Also with a Bellsprout and Oddish. And Gentleman Lamar with a Meowth and a Growlithe. This trainer has a level 18 Sandshrew in the final version of the game. Camper Vance with an Eevee and a Psyduck. Team is exactly one level higher than in the final build. And Coach Trainer Tasha with a Poliwhirl and a Primeape. Almost seems like a precursor to Chuck's team from Gen 2 games if you think about it, but whatever. Kind of, not entirely. Team is exactly one level higher than in the final build. Alright, trainers in Rock Tunnel. This trainer with a level 23 Slowpoke instead of a level 24 Ivysaur. Level 23 Ivysaur, so I guess these two got flipped in some ways since his Slowpoke over here is level 24. Alright, Kangaskhan, one level higher than the final game. These two, one level higher in the final game. These guys, one level higher. All of these, one level higher than the final game. Just to make this a tiny bit faster. Same with these guys down here. All of them one level higher than in the final game. So that's enough with unused trainer teams. Let's next look at early maps. Some of these maps are the same as we've looked at both earlier in this video as well as in part 1. Like some of these. Our main areas, in particular, in this early game, started in Pallet Town, feature water that doesn't animate. In the final version, obviously it animates. The cutscene of stepping out in Pallet Town for the first time missing most likely wasn't put into the game. A wild Pokemon from Route 21 can be seen from Pallet Town, like the Sweeping Bell over here. In the final version, you cannot do that, at least till you unlock Surf. Which does not, or excuse me, Surf's Up, I think it was called. I don't remember what the Bond move or whatever the heck it was called is. Which does not happen in the final game. As you can see here, you can see a Weeping Bell, and what looks like a Rattata down here. Alright, the player's room includes a cushion in front of the table, which was removed in the final version, right over here. And this is still from the May 2018 build. Additionally, the player's house lacks an NPC next to it in May 2018 build. No youngster over here. Alright, your rival's house uses a completely different color scheme. I think we already knew that. We saw that in the previous part. Alright, now Viridian City. I think we've seen some of these before, so if y'all want a little recap on it, I'll let you guys have a second to look. Alright, and here's what that other build from before was talking about, that Blue, is out of bounds here. Blue can be found out of bounds in the Viridian City Gym. Most likely, I think he's there in case the game needs to load him in after you beat Giovanni. Either that or he's in there before you beat Giovanni. And once Giovanni is beaten, the game will actually load him in as the replacement gym leader after you beat the game. So that's most likely why there's there. It's actually a common thing in games. Fun fact, in the original Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, there's not a single, and I should have mentioned that during the unused video for that. There's actually not a single scene in that game that can run without Peach, Mario, or Bowser, at least one of them in the scene. And if none of them happen to be in that scene, there's somewhere, like one of them is always somewhere out of bounds, but this is a little off topic. That's just a nice little example of this here. Most likely why Blue's here so the game can load him in later when he's needed. It's actually a very common thing in game development, as I just mentioned. Route 22. Main details, the player cannot interact with the sun in this build. Most likely because it doesn't have any text on it yet. It wasn't coded to have that, so I guess they took out any collision with it for that reason. Viridian Forest, the camera in Viridian Forest is noticeably closer to the player. We already know that, we saw that earlier. Same with this little build over here with the entrance. And also notice how the light over here at the exit is completely dark while in the final version it's brighter. Alright, both Viridian Forest gates lack NPCs, with the exit gates having a noticeably low camera angle. As you can see here, and it's completely dark over there. And then light out over here. Most likely just changed in the final, and this is probably different entrances and exits. So, just correcting what I said just now before. Many signs don't begin with the trainer tips. Text, and they should, as they should in this build, or that they should in this build, I can't read again, and are very much a work in progress when compared to the final. Alright, and here's what that looks like here. Alright, NPCs, this Bugcatcher has a different placement in the final build. As you can see right over here, he's all the way up here in this build, while here, he's placed right over there. It includes Coach Trainer Kareem, who was removed in Route 3 in the final. Alright, so he was originally going to be at the end of Viridian Forest, maybe as a little test for the player, if they choose to. Well, he was moved here in the final. The Bugcatcher at the first split in Viridian Forest is completely absent. Not over here, as he is in the final version, in place of this Kakuna. Alright, items. An X Defend can be found that isn't in the final game, right over here. I guess they didn't want to give you a stat boosting item that early in the game, most likely. Alright, the Peter Museum has unfinished graphics and also is missing many NPCs, and here's what it looks like. Like, this little rock over here looks a little unfinished, for example. And here's the final version of said museum. Like, the table over here is the most notable difference, I should say. Because notice how the table over here is closer to that little part over here than it is in this build. Alright, NPCs. Pewter City is missing many NPCs that are present in the final game. Notably, the lady with a slowpoke that gives you 1 nugget per day is missing, though her text seems to be present in the game script. Most likely her 3D model just wasn't made for it yet. It wasn't placed there, that's probably why. And here's what it looks like in the final. Since she does have a unique model, so it just most likely wasn't made yet. Alright, we don't have any final pictures for these, but we do have the prototype pictures. Alright, here's what that looks like. Another early version of Pewter City. Alright, some NPCs that are intended to be playing on Nintendo Switches simply are missing them in this build, despite the text still being similar to the final version. I'm trying Pokemon with that kid there. How exactly? Are you just handing them the Pokeballs? Not exactly how that works, kid, but whatever. Oddly, the Super Nerd at the counter was replaced with a Scientist on the final version. Got Super Nerd Boy over here. Alright, in the Pewter City Pokemon Center, a girl mentions that Brock is a ground-type Pokemon user, most likely a mistake, when he is which is technically true, but he's stated to be a Rock-type specialist. It was changed to Rock-type. I mean, yeah, both of his Pokemon are part ground-type, so it's kind of like the same thing with the Lance situation, how everybody likes to call Lance a bird keeper. Does that technically mean Brock is also a ground-type specialist? And this is why we should have had some pure Rock-types back in Gen 1, I'm just saying. But whatever. Rock-types in the final. Strangely, this NPC doesn't appear to be a leftover from a previous game, like many other oddities from a similar nature, and here's what that looks like. Never really thought of that before. Yeah, nope. Rock's actually a ground-type specialist. Kind of like they say the same thing with Agatha technically being a poison-type specialist rather than a ghost-type specialist. Just more products of the of the Pokemon available in the Gen 1 Pokedex. That's most likely all that's from. Instead of giving you 5 Great Balls like in the final, Blue instead gives you the player 5 rare candies, which is a much better prize, especially at this point in the game. I'll take that. Yep, rare candies. Which, honestly, I think the reason why they didn't give him rare candies in the final version is because that would be kind of broken. Like, you could just get 5 free level ups right there. I mean, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are already pretty easy games as is. Or Route 3. Route 3 has a slightly unfinished battle environment, with small differences in geometry. Note the raised in near the sign. The raised hill near the sign. I can't read again. And far less background trees. As you can see here, more background trees, and the hill's a little lower here than the final version. NPCs. A completely new bug catcher named Colton is found here that is missing in the final version. Alright, Kushner Cream was originally in Viridian Forest in this build. We already know that from earlier. Alright, here's now an early build of Mount Moon with this weird looking texture over here. Our Mount Moon has many overhangs that obscure the player's view. They're significantly pulled back in the final to the point where they are noticeable. Significantly pulled back? Yeah, I think the reason why this was changed was because you're going to very easily miss where your player is, and that could cause some confusion. Sure, it's kind of there for immersion, but at the same time, it'd be very annoying for the player. Alright, Last Evelyn, known as Last Hannah in this build, has a different placement in to the final version. Interestingly, her placement is nearly identical to the last in Fire Red Leaf Green. Here's what that looks like. So you can tell they definitely used Fire Red Leaf Green as a sort of template for how they were going to build this game. I mean, that is a better Gen 1 remake in my opinion, so it makes sense for them to do that. Alright, items. TM30 Bulk Up is on Basement Floor 2. Instead of Celadon Department Store, that would be a pretty busted TM to have at this point in the game, though not many Pokemon will learn that move at this point. Route 4, main details, NPCs. A hiker is missing next to the Pokemon Center in this build. That's what that looks like. I guess the lane is just staring at a ghost here or something, where that hiker is in the final version that we cannot see over here. Items. In the Pokemon Center of this in the center of this plateau, 1 Pokeball item is present as opposed to 5 times in the final version. Just a Pokeball. This Paralyzed Heal was seemingly a Burn Heal in Serial Rebuild, which makes sense that they replaced it with a Paralyzed Heal. Because a Burn Heal, there's no Pokemon at this point in the game that could potentially burn you. In the final, this lure becomes a Repel. And Repels are better than lures anyways. Alright, Cerulean City. Main details. Beating Misty's gym battle crashes the game. The Cascade badge is spelled as Cascade badge, which actually is spelled correctly. I guess it's in all caps or whatever. I guess because there's a space right over here between the A and the S over here. When given to the player, as it was in previous games. Oh, that's why there's no space. I see why they changed it. During your revival battle in Cerulean City, the battle environment is largely a work in progress because this background is a giant rock wall, I guess. It's definitely unfinished. It's not a skybox like it is in the final version. The player cannot interact with various signs around Celadon City, or not Celadon, Cerulean City, most likely because the text hadn't been put there yet. Alright, NPCs once again. Obtaining Bulbasaur requires the player to have caught at least 50 Pokemon as opposed to 30 plus in the final version of the game. I don't think at this point you can even catch 50 Pokemon, likely because they intended you to come back later to do this. This house is also missing a Sandshrew and an Oddish and lacks more prominent shadows and lighting. Here's what it looks like. Yeah, the color does look a little different here, as well as some lighting. And here's another picture of that. The Bulbasaur right there. Here's what it looks like in the final version. Alright, NPC placements within the Cerulean Pokemon Center has minor differences. Additionally, the girl that will trade you an Alolan Rattata for your Cantonian Rattata is not present in this build. Probably because it wasn't placed there yet, and I guess this was before they thought of trading, Alolan forms for your Cantonian forms. Instead can be located in Vermilion City's Pokemon Center. Never mind what I just said. A gentleman in the Pokemon Center refers to Bill as a Pokemaniac as opposed to a Pokemon Fanatic like in the final version. They were probably called Pokemaniacs before that was changed, which was their trainer class in previous games. There are 2 types of attack moves, physical and special, we know that. Alright, we need to call a Pokemon Fanatic here. And here's that build as well. Our Cerulean City lacks many NPCs that would appear in the final, such as a hiker with his Clefairy that teaches you about how to style your partner's hair, or Pokemon's hair. Here's what that looks like. Alright, the Onyx House. Our trainers within the Cerulean City often have their models clipped into the diving boards as if they're swimming in midair before jumping into the water. Most likely, yeah, this looks kind of cursed. I guess that was probably for the cutscene where they would dive in before battling you, and that's clearly unfinished here. Animation was most likely not finished for that. Alright, there's no rare candy in the backyard of the gym badge man's house, but a hidden potion can be found instead that wasn't there in the final. Alright, even when the player is on land, Sea Skim, that's what it was called, I forgot. Pokemon can clip through the bridge as a oversight. Yeah, the collision just wasn't put in there yet. It allows the player to get them potentially much earlier than intended. I think I should put these two videos in the description below if you'd all like that. When battling on Nugget Bridge, the battle environments are noticeably unfinished. It appears to use a generic background that is seen in many other grassy routes, with unfinished water. Interestingly, this exact environment can also be seen during the game's reveal trailer. Note the two trees next to each other and lack of water textures. Alright, this is very similar to what we saw earlier. However, here's a prototype build of that. Alright, obtaining Charmander requires a player to have caught at least 90 Pokemon as opposed to 50 plus in the final. And I can put that in the link description as well if anybody would like that. Alright, TM16 Thunderwave can be found here, whereas in the final it's located behind a cut-down bush on Route 25, just like in the original Red and Blue and Fire Red Leaf Green. In the final, it is instead an X Special Defense. Alright, a Raspberry can be found near the water, which is actually a bundle of 3 raspberries in the final version. Our main details. Although not exclusive to this area in particular, Pokemon encountered by the water side using Sea Skim have an unfinished battle environment. Here's what that looks like. NPCs once again, or end items. Our next special defense can be found here, which was replaced by TM16 Thunder Wave in the final version. Behind this bush is a super potion that is not present in the final. A super potion can be found on this route, which becomes 3 Great Balls in the final. This Nanab Berry, next to the underground path entrance, was made 3 times the amount in the final. Our main details and NPCs items once again. I guess there were supposed to be some things there and they're not. Underground Path, Route 5 and Route 6. This potion is a lure in the final game. I think I remember that. Our Route 6 has an unfinished battle environment with primarily different geometry and tree placements. Here's what that looks like. Alright, NPCs once again, and items. An item is a Pokeball in this build as opposed to the rare candies in the final. Instead of being a super potion like in the final, this item is a Paralyze Heal instead. Our Vermilion City, the main details. The SS and model still exists in Vermilion City after it departs, even though the player shouldn't be able to get there after the events of the SSN. The obtaining Squirtle requires the player to have caught at least 110 Pokemon, as opposed to 60 plus in the final version, which, thank the Lord, imagine that. Well, it says 110 Pokemon, not unique Pokemon, so it could be a bit easier. And the NPC that trades the player and Alolan Rattata for their Cantonian Rattata is located here as opposed to in Cerulean City. The stats are ludicrously broken and unfinished. So I'm glad that got changed, right? Ooh, that would be unbalanced. The trainer that gives you a Persian or Arcanine, depending on your version, isn't present in this build. The dialogue still exists in the game script, though 3D models are most likely just not made yet. A youngster in the Pokemon Center isn't seated in this build. NPC placement in the Tips house is different compared to the final. The Machop in the northeast of town is stationary. This trainer also isn't sitting in the final in this version, and his text is very slightly tweaked. A trainer with their Magikarp is missing from this build. The Vermilion Pokemon has different NPC placements. The player can find a hidden Big Pearl in the Machop area instead of a full heal. Alright, now Route 10. Main details NPCs, I don't know why those are there. A Pokeball eventually changes to become 5 times Pokeballs in the final version there. Alright, the visuals of Rock Tunnel's darkness effect before using light up are unfinished. Yeah, that does look kind of unfinished. Like, look at that. It's just a black screen. That's it. With the player hat being shown and whatever the heck this is. So, I'm kind of glad they changed that. I mean, originally in, like, the Gen 1 and Gen 2 games, this effect would have been fine. But here, this just looks awful. And I like this effect a lot more. There's a lot more, like, immersion going on with that. And it's not just a blank black screen. Rock Tunnel, again, everybody's favorite cave in Kanto. Overall background geometry is vastly different in this build, in the shape and texture mapping, when compared to the final version. Here's what that looks like. And I don't know why there's a Goldeen here. You can't find a Goldeen in the final version. In this area. Either that or it's the player's Goldeen. Here's what that looks like in this build, the final version. Notice there's a little bit of water over here while there isn't in this build. Alright, the battle background for Rock Tunnel is largely unfinished when compared to the final version. Here's what that looks like. And we're noticing in this build, the UI is closer to what it is in the final version. Alright, NPCs. Hagar Allen's paces left and right in this build, whereas in the final, he's a spinning trainer with a fixed location. Honestly, which one do you think is arguably more annoying to deal with? Probably the spinning version. Alright, Celadon City. TM30 bulk up is in Mount Moon instead of Celadon's department store in this build. Saffron City. The Crying Master's line loops multiple times before you start your battle against them. That was just unfinished. And once again with the bulk up TM. Alright, Go Park Complex. Main details. It's known simply as Go Park in this prototype build. The text found in the game's script mentions how you can hold 100 Pokemon in each Go Park, as opposed to 50 in the final game. And I'll just leave it right over here so you guys can read this dialogue if you'd like. Alright. Indigo Plateau. Main details. NPCs. The NPC that sells the player various Megastones in the final lacks that functionality in this build. Just wasn't made yet. A stand-in model for Oak is located in the Hall of Fame if you use the debug menu to access it without fighting the champion. Most likely out of bounds. Just so it's there when, after you beat the champion, the game can load in properly. Oak can be found out of bounds in the champion room, like I just mentioned. Just to load him in when he's needed. Alright, items, recurring buildings. Pokemon Center. All Pokemon Centers heal for the same length of time as if the player had a full team of 6, whereas in the final, the animation scales appropriately with the amount of Pokemon on your team. Now, the back wall of every Pokemon Center does not feature a poster depicting the Go Park, suggesting that it wasn't implemented until later on than the visuals of the Pokemon Center were. Pokemarts. Strangely, the Pokemarts have their potions positioned at a different angle than in the final version. Here's what that looks like. A minor thing, but minor goes a long way, I'd say. Here's what that looks like in the final version. It's very minor, slight, I guess. And here's another older build of the game with a much different lighting. Alright, test maps. This build also has plenty of maps clearly for testing purposes that can be accessed through the debug menu. Test outside. By going to field debug system, area zone jump, area underscore test, test outside, those are the codes needed, the player is taken to a ghostly white version of Palatown, which looks a little funny, with no collision. Entering any house will warp the player to the top left of the map, and the music played here is the same track as in the previous area when warping, which is not the case when warping to other areas with the debug menu. Above, Palatown is a very basic looking Route 1, which appears like it was used for testing ledge hopping. The Pokeball item is a potion that is picked up twice for some reason. Here's what that looks like. You can tell, like, the NPCs and the player characters kind of look out of place to this lighting, too, and same with this cut tree over here. It's almost a little creepy, actually. Now, here's another picture of that for Route 1. Alright, when talking to the NPCs, the woman in the bottom left will crash the game when interacting with. The woman in the center references dialogue from 4 Island in Fire Red Leaf Green, as she mentions Pokemon eggs and talking to her sister inside the building, most likely as a placeholder for testing purposes. I think that's what that was for until they decided to replace the dialogue with the dialogue they actually want. This suggests that either Pokemon breeding mechanics or Sevi Island content from Fire Leaf Green was planned at some point, which actually would have been really cool. They should have put that. What a shame, because those weren't in the original Pokemon Yellow, or, they just didn't have time. Your rival offers to trade you an Alolan Rattata for a Cantonian Rattata, which is done by a different NPC in the final version. So, makes me wonder how the Pokemon Stadium NPC over there would have gotten his hands on a Alolan Rattata, but whatever. That also suggests he might have been able to trade other Alolan Pokemon, too. And the remaining NPCs, one hidden in the top left of the map geometry, and in the bottom right of Palatown, cannot be interacted with at all. There's a cuttable tree near the rival as well, as you can see there. Alright, here's that Fire Red Leaf Green dialogue. Here it is again. Alright, and just a few test maps over here. Alright, test underscore character 1 to the arrow, test underscore character 4. By going to Field Debug System and inserting this code, a basic test map with many trainer models can be accessed. None of them can be interacted with besides the coach trainer at the top left, which instantly crashes the game. The area uses Route 1's music. And here's what that looks like. It's merely just a test room, so they can test out each of the different models and whatnot, as you can see right over here, for various characters seen throughout the game. And here's another picture of it. Alright, similar by using this code over here. Another test map with non-interactable trainers can be found. Heading to this code over here also produces another test map with more NPCs. The music on this map is also shared with Route 1. Again, just more test rooms. Alright, and the final test room map can be accessed with this code right over here, and has yet another arrangement of NPCs that cannot be interacted with. Below that, however, is an assortment of NPCs that exist specifically to test their collision with, which range from 30 units, 50 units, and 70 units, from the top row to the bottom. A model of your rival is also present, and just as a generic yes/no text box that serves no functionality outside of being interactable. Most likely just test interactions with different characters. Hey, Pokemon Stadium NPC, how are you doing? Yes? No? Yes. Anyways. Alright, town map. Whilst now not technically an area, the prototype map screen has slightly different descriptions from various locations and landmarks. Route 3, Route 12, and here they are. And I'll keep this here for a second so y'all can read this. Pause if you need to. Alright, with that being said, we have looked at that part over here, and next, we'll be going over these over here, not the debug table because I looked, there's nothing there. So, that'll be it for part 2 of the unused Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee vid. Yeah, we'll be talking about this in part 3, don't you worry. So, if y'all enjoyed this and want to see more, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And in the comments below, what part did we discuss over here that you would have liked to see in the final version of the game? Let us know in the comments below. Anyways, thank y'all for watching, see y'all in part 3, and have a berrific day.